Hey, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Dimari.
And we're Side by Side. On behalf of Side by Side, just a quick note before the show begins. We created this platform for people to share their stories and perspectives on a wide range of topics. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed by guests on the show do not necessarily reflect those of our own. And now, enjoy Side by Side Podcast.
Hi, I'm Dimari.
And I'm Brandon. Before the show begins, please subscribe, like, comment, and share with a friend.
This allows us to increase our visibility on the platforms where you listen and watch so we can continue to bring you quality content each week. Help us grow, and we can grow together by enlightening minds one question at a time.
And now, back to the show. Welcome back to Side by Side. I'm Brandon Rizzo.
And I'm Dimari Swanagain.
Here on the show, we're creating unity through diversity, bringing two different guests on every week, talk about stories and perspectives on a range of topics, hopefully enlightening minds one question at a time. Before we get into it today, we do have two great guests. Cam B and Raffi Andonian are going to be joining us. We'll get to them in just a second. But before we do, we always start off with our weekly ritual of what are you excited about, which is, I'm going to ask you, what are you excited about?
What am I excited about? I feel like, I don't know, man. I got John coming out next weekend.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, John's coming out next weekend from London. Just found out him and his fiance, who I met, I didn't even know they were engaged.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know any of this. And
she's from Italy, right?
She's from Italy. He just shoots me a text like, hey, bro, what are you doing June 4th? I'm like, he's like, yeah, we're getting married in Vegas. I'm like, what? What?
Which doesn't make any sense because they're not even American.
Even from America,
so
right.
It's like it doesn't even
No, but so I asked about it because I was like, how does that even work? And he's like, it's nothing. It's basically just like the marriage certificate is still there, but the ceremony is there, just like anything else, So they're just having a super unconventional wedding. I don't even know, his family's going to be there. It's like no family's going to be there from what I understand. It's just like him and his new wife and the homies if we fly out.
So is he going to stay at your place? Are they staying at your place?
Yeah, they're coming here next weekend. We're going to, I'm going to take him around. He's like, he wants some Texas barbecue.
Nice.
So we're going to do some of that. I don't know if we're going to do Terry Black's. This other dude, Xavier, told me about some other places. Franklin's, I'm not waiting for that line. He told me some other places that I never even heard of in my life. But he's been to all of them, and he's like, that's the best one. You met Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
Do some pool, hang out at the pool,
nice.
Show him some hikes, some stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go to Vegas, though. I'm like, I don't know, bro. I never really cared for Vegas too much, but we'll see. I'm pumped about it because I haven't seen him since I went to London in 2018. So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. What about you, man? What has you excited at the moment?
Well, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but hopefully, fingers crossed, Tuesday, be closing on my first house. Officially become a homeowner.
Woo!
So excited about that, and we're going to do some projects just right out the gate, get some stuff done, and then try to move in mid-June or something. But I'm super excited, man. We've been in this nice apartment downtown for a few years now, and excited to have a little space with a yard and driveway and the whole house. Yeah. So it's gonna be cool, man.
I feel like you're just gonna get a bigger belly at this point. You're just about to.
Nah, man. I went to yoga 4 times this week.
They got fat people in yoga too.
Yeah, but at least my cardio and all that'll be good. My breathing.
That's true.
I
feel like it's gonna be a lot more grilling and chilling.
Yeah. I mean, we for sure going to be grilling and chilling out in the backyard.
I already know, man. I'm excited about that now. Add that to the list, man. But let's bring these guests on now, man.
Yeah. Well, we're going to introduce the guests here. So we got, again, Cam B, Raffi Andonian. Thanks for being on the show, guys. We appreciate you taking the time.
The celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, man. Cam, let's start with you, man. So what has you excited at the moment, man?
Well, I have a festival going on for a restaurant that I'm invested in called Rocksteady Sound Systems this weekend. So super excited about that. Geeked about all the great DJs that's going to come out, and it's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great time
Where's
out in
that?
Atlanta. In Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
So I'm based in
Nice.
Chicago, but Atlanta's becoming a second home right now. So
I mean,
Nice.
Atlanta's like Chicago Junior at this
it
point, and
is.
then and like Houston, I guess is like the third,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's
Dude,
cool,
that's
man. Rocks,
awesome.
what's it called? Rocksteady Sound System.
Rocksteady Sound System, the name of the festival. Yeah, Rocksteady's the name of the restaurant.
Oh man, that's
Nice.
awesome. Is this the first
It's the second one.
festival?
We
Second.
did it last year. We did it actually for the 4th of July and Labor Day weekend last year.
Awesome.
Cool, man. So
Yeah.
what's the festival? You have like artists, musicians.
DJs, it's all
What's
DJs. Louis Vega, Rich Medina, Ron Trent, Talib Kweli. It's a bunch of DJs just spinning
Woo!
Nice.
for 2 days,
That's good.
dancing, dancers. It's a whole vibe.
Oh man, that
awesome.
sounds sick, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I was balling
It's
and
a
I
party.
could just like take my DJ to Atlanta,
Yeah.
you know. But I'm not. So
Yeah.
that's cool, man. Raffi, what about you, man? What has you excited at the moment?
Well, as you know, I just released my second season of my TV show, so that's
Yes, sir.
exciting. Been caught up in all that, and so I'm excited about that. Absolutely, and it's called Cleo the Muse. It's on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire. And
Awesome.
Cleo the Muse is a reference to an ancient Greek goddess, and our tagline on the show is "Challenging the present by inquiring the past." So we try to
Nice.
bring together people's stories, much like you all do, but I do so with an angle of kind of helping illuminate, issues in history through people who have, a particular perspective through their lived story or something like that helps them provide a perspective. Of course, Dimari, right here, is one of my guests on the second
Yes,
season,
sir.
and we feature him for an entire episode, and he did really, really well,
I
and
think
has a fascinating story.
I think a lot of
Go ahead.
people were saying that they learned some stuff about you they didn't even know
Yeah.
by watching that
Right.
episode.
Yeah. I mean, anybody that knows me knows like I'm pretty private and guarded, but I don't know. Raffi called me the night before and we chatted, and I was like, you know what, bro? I'm gonna give you some good like Oprah Winfrey Dr. Phil material, bro. Like I'm gonna tell these people my story on
Yeah.
your show. So
That's awesome.
I should be like #1 in the ratings at this point. I don't know if you've checked the numbers, but I think I just yeah.
The
I think
highest
I'm
stream,
crushing
Got
it.
some views.
I think I got the
I
highest
appreciate it.
views. Awesome,
Yeah,
man. That's
yeah.
really cool.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. We want to start off the show by just learning more about y'all's backgrounds, and we'll start with Cam. Cam, why don't you tell the people a little bit about your upbringing, what your family life was growing up, and what led you to where you are today?
Okay. Well, I got a lot of like athletes in my family. I grew up playing basketball. I was a hooper. So that was a big thing. In high school, I went to play like college ball, played at a junior college, and I played at an NAI school. Actually tore my ACL my senior year, kind of slowed me down a little bit, but we worked it out. We worked it out. We here. So I went to high school, Waukegan High School, which is outside of Chicago. I went to Colombia College. I don't know how far back you want me to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got a lot of,
did you
like I
grow
said,
up?
athletes in my family, a lot of musicians and artists and stuff in my family too. So I kind of fit like the same mold, I guess, of the rest of them.
Yeah. And so you siblings? You have siblings?
I have siblings. I have one sister and I have 3 brothers. But I also
And
grew up
so
with my cousins that are like my brothers too. So
you grew up. Was it a single parent household, 2-parent household? What did that
I
look
grew up
like?
with just my mom, but I grew up in a family with my aunt and my uncle too. Like I said, my cousins. So we all lived in the same house on and off throughout my life. And that was my 2 cousins and my 3 cousins, 2 boys and a girl, and then my aunt and my uncle, who's from the Bahamas. So I got a little bit of a Bahamian upbringing as well in that household. My dad lives in Seattle, and he has two sons as well. So those are my 2 other brothers. But I'm the
Wow.
oldest. I'm the oldest in my family. I'm the oldest, and my sister has 4 kids. So I have three nephews and a niece, and then my mom has a son who's also my brother, obviously, and he has a daughter. So I have a niece with him as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big family.
big family.
Huge.
We spread around all over the place.
So hold on. When you say you grew up like with that Bahamian side,
Yeah.
what does that look like? Because I'm looking at the hair and it's looking wavy, bro.
Well, no,
So
my uncle's from the Bahamas, and actually, my cousins who I mentioned for some time in my life, probably from their like fourth grade through till we was freshmen in high school, because me and my one cousin were in the same grade. They would move back and forth to the Bahamas and back and forth. So he would go there for like half the year and then come back, then go and half the year and come back. And so I just and then a lot of my uncle's relatives would come live in the house with us. So just I would get the Bahamian food, the language, just the vibe of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm pretty familiar with that culture. I've been to the Bahamas several times in my life too. But I'm not Bahamian by blood. But it's kind of like again, growing up in a household with a Bahamian man is like the man of the house. So just getting that experience and knowing how they kind of move and roll and just I'm a very appreciative of that culture because I understand that culture a good amount.
Are you a small business owner, young professional, or pre-retiree looking to grow and protect your assets but don't know where to start? With all the noise about stocks, bonds, cryptos, it can be hard to know what steps to take. Let Black Swan Financial Group help you so you can focus on doing what you're good at. Black Swan Financial Group is a telefinancial planning firm operating in select states nationwide. They're here to help you protect, create, and grow your assets. Visit blackswanfinancialgroup.com today to get your free consultation. Now back to Side by Side.
oh man,
Yeah.
that's good.
So with all the people kind of coming and going from the house, I'm sure that kind of like affected your upbringing and your growth and just kind of getting into all these things.
Yeah.
So what was it like having all those brothers around? How were the relationships and the dynamics in the family?
I really enjoyed my upbringing as a kid because again, I have people that was around my same age. We're all like looking out for each other, and even to this day, those are the closest people, my closest friends. My cousins and stuff. Like we just that thick with it. And it's always something to look out for when you're in school or when you're doing whatever. Somebody has your back. Somebody is right there. So if you get into like a little scuffle or fight, you could. My cousin was bigger than me too. We're the same height now, but he grew way faster than me when we was younger. So he was like 6'3" in the 8th grade, and I'm like 5'6" or something. So he was not somebody people really wanted to mess with in the first place.
Yo, you be like the worst person to ever get into a wig. You're like, yo, I'm about to go get my cousin.
Yo, let me grab all these Bahamians.
Like 30 cousins, bro. Yeah. Like, damn, I messed up.
Yeah.
Wait, so you hoop though?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what position did you play?
I played a lot of positions. Mostly 2 and 3. Like when I got to college.
2 and 3.
I played at a junior college called Richland, in Dallas, Texas, North Dallas. We're actually third in the nation. The year I was out there. And then I played at a smaller NAI school to finish up in Deerfield, Trinity International University. So it was cool there. But at that time, I actually was trying to get into film school and do music. So I was like trying to maneuver because at one point I wanted to play pro ball and I could have probably played overseas or something, got an agent and did that. There's a few people from my team that actually did do that. But after tearing my ACL, my mind started thinking a little different about basketball and sports actually.
Okay, definitely want to get into that transition, but want to give Raffi an opportunity to introduce himself.
Oh, sure.
Raffi, tell us about your upbringing, man.
Sure, man. So I grew up in LA, in Los Angeles, born and raised all the way through high school, and I moved away ever since. Lived in 6 different states since then. I'm in St. Louis now, and I was born first generation in the U.S. My mom's from Egypt. My dad's from Romania, although ethnically we are Armenian and Greek, mostly Armenian. My name is Armenian. And my dad escaped the communist regime in Romania, and in the 60s as a little kid, and left with almost nothing. Swallowed a diamond. That was one of their few possessions that they could walk out with. But you wouldn't be able to walk out with it because it was worth a lot of money. But put in a plastic bag, swallowed a diamond, and then of course, pull it out later. We still have that diamond in the family today.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool.
That's pretty crazy.
That's a cool story.
Yeah. So, and he came and, got an education, worked for a major aircraft company, switched over to a side hustle that became the main hustle as a jewelry manufacturer. And that's the world I was born into as a small business owner. So I came up all right. You know what I mean? Kind of middle class. And Like I said, I grew up in LA, wanted to switch coasts when I went to college. So I went to the East Coast. Pennsylvania was my first stop out of California. And I got tied to an internship at Gettysburg while I was there. Gettysburg, of course, is a big Civil War battlefield, and it's in Pennsylvania. And that internship later led to going back several summers with a job as I was finishing college and grad school. And that's how I got into history. And that was sort of the beginning of my path toward what is now the celebrity historian thing with my TV show. I do speaking gigs. I had 3 books. I taught a couple of classes for different organizations, things like that. And so, I value a lot of perspective. That's one of the reasons Dimari and I have connected so well over the years. We know each other from the financial industry, and kind of people often wonder how are history and finance connected. And in my head, they always were, because when I worked at Gettysburg, I remember they needed capital, and it was National Park Service site. And National Park Service, you got to go to Congress. It literally takes an act of Congress to get capital, other than your operational funds that you get every year. And long story short, it was difficult to do so. So there was a nonprofit that was associated, a private entity, that raised $100 million and was able to do a whole bunch of work that needed to be done, update the museum, set up a new visitor center, do some battlefield restoration. That's when I saw the power of money. That's when I understood power of institutional money to achieve something good in that situation for something I cared about. Coming from a business owner family and seeing that really affected me. And so when I first came out of school, not only did programming at historic sites, but worked on fundraising, capital endowments, and so on and so forth. I have one of my master's degrees is in nonprofit development. That's how I kind of got into it. I worked at Los Alamos, where the atomic bomb was created. It was part of a fundraising campaign there. And so to me, it was always intertwined. And that's how I got into these ventures. And hence the financial industry that I know Dimari through, and my historian sort of project that I have been going, which is really trying to communicate creatively with history. I'm not the History Channel. I'm not PBS. I'm not just trying to lecture history. I bring on guys like Dimari who are great at dialogue, have a lot of great perspective, appreciate the value of history, and can find a lens to apply to interpret things around us. And that's really what I try to do. I've done TV segments on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox stations on controversial monuments, when the monument tearing down stuff was going on, to Russia, Ukraine, with historic context recently, with all that's going on there. And so I try to find stuff around us that's relevant and provide some kind of insight so that people that are not interested in history can find an avenue to care about it and see that it's relevant and present around us. I'm not trying to communicate to people that are already interested in history, but to bring in audiences that normally are not. I try to be creative. You know what I mean? And so
I love that.
All those backgrounds really kind of help, shape that.
No, that's awesome. Cool. Like you mentioned, I had an opportunity to come on the show, and to know Raffi personally is completely different than knowing Raffi when he's in that element. I mean, I was really impressed. I was extremely impressed. The questions that he has and just the knowledge that he has around this stuff. Cam, I'm interested to know, are there any parts of history that are interesting to you that maybe Raffi can lend some insight?
I mean, I'm definitely big into history, actually. Black culture, I've been studying these things for years. Music, just like a Black American music, I think is so interesting. Diaspora, just the Caribbean, so many different things with history. Yeah, I'm into history. So even the history of Chicago, so many cool things have happened in that city, and that city's transition in so many ways. It's been a hub for so many things throughout the nation. So I'm definitely into history.
Speaking of Chicago, Raffi, you're in Chicago, right? And I see you're in a pretty big building there. You want to tell us where you're at right now?
Yeah, historic building, right? I'm in Union Station in Chicago, and I obviously like historic buildings and the setting and the legacy that they have, and so I thought it'd be a fitting background, to sit right here. I'm in public, just hanging out and helping set the mood.
I love it.
Appreciate it.
Those columns in the back are really nice.
What's so cool is when Dimari and I were planning this episode of the show, part of the reason why we chose the two of you is there's just so many interesting kind of like weird overlaps between the two of you that I thought would create a really cool conversation. And so one of the things that we were talking about was, I know Cam. He obviously knew Raffi. Cam and I met in college. We used to do a lot of music stuff together. He had a band with, it was your brother, right, Josh? Cam?
What you said? What? Oh, Josh? No, he's not my brother.
Oh, no, okay,
But my
okay. So
cousin who I spoke about earlier was in the band. He played the bass. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so Cam had a band. I had a band in college. We would do a lot of shows together. We just like
yeah,
hang out, parties, all that good stuff. And Cam also has always been this amazing photographer, videographer, and so he would do a lot of stuff for our band. He would do stuff for all the artists that were in our friend circle. And he kind of started. You cut your teeth doing
yeah,
that, and then that turned into this really cool career. And so the overlaps, I think, Raffi, you've worked in like TV, you've done all this cool like his history stuff, and then Cam, conversely, you have also worked in
yeah.
TV and you've interviewed some huge people from history. So tell us a little bit about how that whole history of your kind of career developed and what led to that.
Me or Raffi? Both of us? Or?
Oh, Cam,
Okay.
Cam, yeah, Cam.
Like
Sorry,
you said,
start with Cam.
going to Columbia College, and this is after I played ball and stuff. I actually worked for like a year, and then I went back to school, and that's where I went to Columbia. And just meeting all the great artists, meeting you, Fly Phoenix, all of them. So many great artists that we know there that are end up doing a lot of great things. Like whether it wasn't music anymore, they end up in the fashion, end up in television
Yeah,
shows, like all kind of stuff. So that was just such a great hub to meet people. But yeah, I always had a passion for film and filmmaking. I was actually in a television class in high school, so it was like something that I had always wanted to do anyway. And just being able to do like music videos and stuff was a great opportunity for that. Obviously, like the DSLRs and those things came out at that turn of the time we were in school, and that opened the door for a lot of people with lower budgets to make high quality stuff. And then obviously the
yeah,
blog era too, which was like a big thing for me. Being blogs reaching out to me and able to do like interviews with all these other artists and getting connected in that way kind of grew what I was doing. And it's crazy how, growing up watching like Hype Williams and all these other videos and imagining, oh, I want to be able to do that one day. But then you're doing it at a different scale, but it's still like impactful where it's going all over the internet and, you're still getting all
yeah.
these kind of views and all this stuff. So I think that journey kind of started at Columbia College, but I was able to work with like Rhapsody, Knife Wonder, Tyler Kweli, Common Chance. I mean, I can name a bunch of people, that I work with.
Yeah.
Through starting there at Columbia, starting, with local artists, kind of from the ground up.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if that
Shout
answers your
out
question
to
or led into
Columbia
something, but
College.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Actually, so
But
I want
Cam,
to kind of. Oh yeah, go ahead,
let
Rafi.
me add something real quick. There's another place of overlaps. You guys are talking about overlap that I'm not sure Damari even knows, but you mentioned playing basketball. So I played basketball and
Oh, word.
football in middle school and high school.
Okay.
No way.
And I swear to God, now, I'm more of a football build. If you see me, like
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
5'11", 220, right? That's very football build. But so I was shorter for basketball, if you will. But I'm like Chris Paul, but I'm fit.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? So I would play.
Pause.
This might be or Draymond
yeah.
Green, right? He's kind of short for front court position. I play more like 3 or 4. I don't have the handles for the 1 or 2.
Okay.
So I play 3 or 4. With body, like physical, and that kind of thing.
Well, I'm gonna
And
say this,
I
Rafi.
played summer leagues. I played all kinds of things. Yeah.
I've never seen either of you play, but my money's on Cam.
Well, he played at a higher level, but I
I'm
will
also
say
six
I grew up
five, so it's
also.
like
Yeah, exactly right.
Even with
But
the torn ACL, I'm still taking them, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
hey, I busted my shoulder, dislocated it playing football, so I got
Then
an
I'm
excuse
definitely
if I get
taking them.
schooled. But I have one more thing that was really fun, man, and that might be relevant here is, I grew up playing. Also, I played pickup in LA, just playgrounds throughout the city, and I didn't realize till later in life, like kind of since we're talking about perspective and conversation here, the perspective that I gained with that really is among many things helps you kind of enrich what you're exposed to. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
didn't realize that wasn't normal. That was my normal until later when I lived elsewhere and just was in different circles that like I didn't realize that was something
yeah,
unusual. So separate of playing in the organized leagues, just playing in the city, at the playgrounds, honestly, a lot of my values, I have many different sources of values, but that's one of the sources that I picked it up. And that's part of the reason that, I talk a lot of smack too, a lot of times. That's where I learned how to talk smack. And watching NBA in the 90s when you had like
Yeah.
Gary Payton and them, you know what I
No, it
mean?
was
So
real.
Are you looking to fully brand or rebrand your business? Graphic designer Maaly Williams is ready to take your brand to the next level with high quality logo work, web design, and amazing jaw-dropping marketing materials. You can follow him at graphic.mw on Instagram to book a consultation to get started. Yeah. No, they were like brawling back then, which is funny since we're on that topic at the moment. This made me think because when you say, you have all of these cousins and all of this stuff, Cam, did that like add to, your competitive nature?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even fighting, like I probably fought my cousins more than any other people. Like I got heavy training there, so it was like all good. But yeah, I've always been really competitive though. I'm probably more competitive than them, to be honest with you. Yeah, I
Oh,
used to
really?
be just
Okay.
pissed when I lost. So yeah, I still get a little
Okay.
pissed.
So
I'm a little older now. I can be more mature. I can take the loss a little better.
So do you enjoy winning more or hate losing?
That's a good question. I think I enjoy winning more. Especially at
Okay.
this.
Oh, I'm surprised, Cam.
Maybe
I'm
when I was younger,
surprised.
I hated losing more. But I think as I've gotten older and matured, just appreciation of how much hard work you have to do to like achieve
True.
something. I think I enjoy
Yeah.
winning more now.
Yeah. What
Well, I
about you,
guess I haven't
Raffi?
matured then, man. Oh man, I
I
hate
hate
losing,
losing.
boy.
I hate
I hate
losing.
that more, much more. It's like to me, it's like I
What's yours?
expect to win, so that's like
Oh, I
normal. So
love
I
winning.
don't like. I actually, this is kind of funny. Like I don't even. It sounds terrible, but if I hit certain achievements, people are like, oh, let's celebrate this and that. I don't really like to celebrate.
Yeah,
Like I'm like on to the
yeah,
next thing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because I
Mm.
it's like I expected it. So therefore, when I lose, that really
I
gets to
hear
me.
you.
It really gets to me. And I'll give you a funny example that applies today. Let's say I'm pitching someone to get a speaking gig that I really want to get, or the TV or whatever. I remember more the people that rejected me, and I'm like, I'm going to show them more than I remember the people that
Yeah,
accepted me. I
Mm.
remember, and that almost kind of reminds me of like, you hear these guys that don't get drafted, and then they
Yeah.
kind of remember all the people in front of them that didn't pick them, like Paul Pierce was like that, Tom Brady's like that. And they go up in their speeches and they list all the teams. I kind of feel that way because I feel like the losses stay with me more. But the key is what you do with that, right? Like, do you let it get you down or do you let that fuel you? And so it's how you channel the
yeah.
negative that then I think can push you.
I
You know what I mean? You
No,
probably agree with
I
that, Cam,
definitely
right? You
agree. Yeah,
take that
no,
and channel
losses
that.
are lessons, man. That's really what I'd be taking away from at this point. Is just like,
That's a
well,
good way to say it.
what
Yeah.
could I take from this, this moment? Because it don't feel good. But like, I definitely agree with you in
Yeah.
terms of how you look at it.
No, Rafi's like, nah, I'm about to spin the block, bro. Anybody that did not give me the opportunity, I'm spinning the block. We doing drills. Yo, this dude that's actually how we met, honestly, because he had won
Yeah,
like some
true.
award
You met spinning
Yeah,
the block?
No. No. He
Rafi's getting busy over here.
Yeah, he is getting busy. No, he like won some award. He was giving a speech, and like everyone was just like giving him like praise and all of this stuff, and I was just like unimpressed. I did not
yeah.
care, and because of that, like he was like, "Why don't you care?" Like, and that's how we ended
That's a
up
good
becoming
example.
Oh
like.
man, that's hilarious.
That's like literally how we
That's
became
hilarious.
friends. But I kind of want to just shift back to you for a second, Rafi, because Cam brought up, always wanting to be in TV and stuff like that. So you grew up in LA and you're obviously in TV now. Like, what was the inspiration behind you getting into TV? Was it, you went to Hollywood or something and saw the hot girls, or what was it?
Yeah, that's funny. So no, believe it or not, I never, when I was growing up in LA, to me, that was normal. So it wasn't like the kind of bright lights thing where I was like, oh my God, I want to be in TV because I didn't move to LA. I grew up there, right? So it wasn't until I moved away and people were like, oh, what? You're from LA? That's kind of cool. I didn't realize it was cool. But the way I got into TV, I would say, you know, I personally loved speaking live more than on camera. Like when I was at historic sites or I did some speeches and stuff like that, I was really good at it. And I still like it a lot. It's a different thing to learn to talk on camera. But the way I got into TV was when I realized the opportunity that TV provided to not only get the word out, but to position yourself as an expert in that industry, right? When you're on, simply by being on TV, you have that positioning. So I started just pitching local TV stations across the country, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox stations, doing 3-minute segments on their shows. And in doing so, other opportunities came, including having my own show now on the streaming TV, the Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire. So they're two separate things, but interconnected. But it started because I started pitching local TV stations, trying to get on to do a 3-minute segment. And that is hard work. And there's a specific thing you have to do. I studied what makes good TV on local TV to try to take my message and fit it into that, because you got to have commitment over ego. And what I mean by that is you can't say, well, this is how it should be, so this is how I'm going to do it. They're not going to take you. You have to understand the game and do the commitment to the game over whatever your ego is, and understand how to use your creativity to adjust your content to fit into what's in front of you so you can get on and have the channel and the avenue to get that across, right? On my own show, though, I have more control, and that's where I kind of do the content exactly how I want it, as you have seen, Dimari. And both have their value. I like both. Both are exercise different parts of the creativity and brain. But that's how I got into TV. And now I like a camera, which I didn't think I would necessarily be into as much because I feed off the live energy of live
Yeah.
people. But over time, I learned how to work the camera, and that was cool. And it did a lot for talking about kind of business here too. It did a lot in terms of positioning me as a brand as well. Because when you're on TV, you become more of a brand, right? Right or wrong, that's just how the perception is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I want to dig into that for a sec, because this is a topic that Dimari and I talk about a lot when we're just conversing, but also on the show, is this the idea you brought up of commitment versus ego, and how that kind of plays into people's lives and their pursuits for stuff. So I'd love to kind of just pivot over to Cam. Cam, is that something that's been a kind of center point for you in your career and the things that you've worked on and projects, and what does that look like?
You talking about ego? Can you say the question one more time? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was. So he was saying, he was making the
Yeah.
point of the commitment
Yeah.
versus ego, and kind of making sure that your commitment is more than the ego to be
definitely.
successful. So how's that played out for you?
In the industry that we're in, it's a big thing. Like the ego, your ego, you get bigged up, or you're in a certain platform. You do got to check your ego, because it's not really about that. It's really about why you were doing it in the first place, or what's the point or the purpose of the work that you're doing. And it's easy for you to get real hyped up, and people hype you up, and you kind of can lose sight of that. So it's definitely something that you got to, balance yourself with, and even being in who you're surrounding yourself with. You know what I mean? Like people that can have honest conversations with you about the stuff you're doing. You know what I mean? Like I think that's been a key thing in my life, is just having the right people around to kind of keep me grounded and keep me in a space where, it's always kind of checking me off a little bit, in terms of like, yeah, I'm doing a lot of cool stuff, but it's this is also what I want to be doing, and it's okay to just just be a normal person still, and not get fed into so much, what other people are hyping you up about.
Hey everybody, Brandon and Dimari from Side by Side here. Just want to tell you about one of our newest sponsors, Ease Web Development.
Ease Web Development specializes in building high conversion websites and marketing campaigns that take your business to the next level. They're the easy decision when it comes to marketing.
So check them out now at www.easewebdev.com. That's ease, WEBDEV.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So Cam, I mean, if you're in a position and you're successful and you're reaching these heights and you keep these people around you to keep you humble, how do you distinguish between, hate and love?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm a vibe person. For me, you know what I mean? Like, it's really just about reading people's energies and stuff like that. It's something that, I've been really attuned to a good portion of my life, most of my life, I think, that I can remember. It's just like, I couldn't even name what it was when I was younger, but, as I got older, I'm like, yeah, I'm just reading like people's vibes and their energy and what they're bringing to the table. And you can start to see people's motives and how people move with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's when they show up, the type of questions they ask, just how they interact with you. It's like, okay, this person is like a genuine person. Like they really just care. Or they just want to, they have a genuine interest in you or in what you're doing.
It's a good point, Cam. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I add to that? I mean, also, I
Yeah.
think also effort people
yeah,
make around you, right? Like it's easy to talk sometimes. It's different to make an effort. And I'm not trying to kiss up to Dimari because Dimari and I are always battling in a great way. I love that about Dimari. But I will
Like
say,
literally right
like an
before the
example.
show, we were like going back and
I
forth.
know we
yeah,
were talking smack. That's right. But I'll tell you though, and I appreciate that, because I don't think you should surround yourself only with people that think
yeah,
exactly like you. I think you learn more by pushing each other. You know what I mean? But effort is a big deal to me. And I'll give you an example. I mean, just coming on the show, we record my show in Dallas, and Damari flew, drove all the way to Dallas, spent a couple days there, and everything. That's what I'm talking about. It's so easy for people to say, and I get this all the time. People say, "Oh yeah, I'm interested in this and that," and then like, "I'm too busy. I'm this and that." Damari made the commitment, and he made it happen, and that kind of thing shows me, you know when someone's with you early on as you're building and they're making effort like that,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like that tells you who's riding with you. You know what I'm saying? And and
Yeah,
and
that's real.
when you're on that journey, Cam, I maybe use the word
yeah,
loyalty is a big deal, right? And who's genuine and who's not, and that's a way to maybe separate love and
yeah,
hate.
yeah.
You know
No, I
what I'm
totally
saying?
agree. You're
Yeah.
saying some points there. So
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a idea, this concept I heard on a podcast once about having a friendly nemesis. So like you think about like superhero comics and stuff like that, where the villain is like the nemesis, but really if you think about like the mythology of it, it's like that person that is like the counterpoint to you, that pushes you, that challenges you to be
yeah,
your best self. And I mean, I definitely have that relationship with Damari. Like him and I have done music together and stuff. We always like joust, like you were talking about, Raffi. So I would love to hear, Cam, do you have like a friendly nemesis or a partner that like pushes you, that challenges you?
I wouldn't say one set person. I think in different avenues or different aspects, it's a different person. But I definitely have people who
Yeah.
challenge me, question me, who like, oh, you should do this or do that, or have you thought about this, or just they're doing something amazing. I'm like, man, what am I doing? Like, let me step up my game a little bit. But I don't think I have this like one set person. I guess it depends on the realm of what you're doing, because I do music, do film, I do, I've been like even
Yeah.
investing more in doing those kind of things. So it's just a different each lane has a different kind of person or a different group of people that do that.
Yeah. And Rafi, what about you? What do you think about that idea of friendly nemesis?
It's critical, and I agree with Kim. You got different people that are doing that, different lanes, like you said too, and each person also has a different
Yeah,
perspective, right? It's not always two sides of something. There's 10 sides, or there's nuances and spectrums. That there's kind of these gray areas, and you need to have people that are in all those different positions to be able to push you with all those different perspectives, life experiences, things they researched, and whatever they're bringing to the table. You know what I'm saying? And so all those different lanes matter and they shape you. And sometimes it's not even a topic you're talking about. It's just a different way of thinking. And that's really valuable
Yeah.
too, because, there are things that connect. I just made a connection from playing
yeah,
basketball in LA to like how it affects how I think about things today. Right. So the topic doesn't always have to be the same for it to influence how your brain is. And the way I think about this is this, say you go to the gym, right? And you're doing like a shoulder press or something, right? I mean, in real life, are you ever going to do a shoulder press? You're not. But yet the muscle you build, the muscle memory you build somehow comes in handy when
yeah,
you're doing something else. And I
Yeah.
think the brain works the same way. You have those conversations. It may not be the exact topic that you're going to cover later, but the muscle memory from that, the brain muscle memory comes in handy somewhere else. And to me, that's when innovation happens, because now you start to link unconnected things. You come up with something
Yeah.
creative and
that
you're
was
doing
such a
something
great
new.
point. Yeah, such
Wow,
a great
that is
point.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cam, tell us a little bit more about like what do you do exactly in TV and
Well,
film?
I'm an Emmy Award winner. I worked in television. I worked with NBC.
Awesome.
I've worked with a lot of the state like BET, a lot of different stations, but I did a lot of stuff in the music industry. So, like I said, I did music videos a lot for Rhapsody. That was like as she was coming up, doing her thing, I was the person doing her videos. All the way through Rock Nation, I did a video for her last album. Afeni was the last video I did with her for her album Eve, and I've done videos for each of her projects, the last since 2014. Um,
And one of
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I was gonna say this would be awesome for Raffi to hear because I think he'd be really interested in this. One of the
Yeah.
things that I always thought was really cool, Cam, that you did was you got the privilege of
Yes,
interviewing Maya
yes.
Angelou. Can you tell us about that story and
Yeah,
like how
we
that came
interviewed
about?
my Common.
From
Yeah,
St. Louis.
Common and Maya Angelou. It was with Go Where Hip Hop. But that clip actually was bought by BET. They bought that clip from me, and they aired it on BET and did a whole special on Maya Angelou, and my interview was part of that special, which was really cool. Just had an opportunity to meet them and sit down, and it was, just again vibe and energy. She just has such a magnificent, glow around her. It was just she's one of the most special people that I've met in my life and got to meet. She was just dropping gems, in the interview. But it was just me running around like, in Chicago at that time, doing stuff from one blog to another blog. I actually shot like 3 things that day and met I shot something with an artist that I continue to work with to this day, Aja Monet, who's a poet, that same day. And we did some really a cool video that kind of led to our whole relationship of working on video and stuff too. So that was actually a very interesting day, the day I worked with Dr. Maya Angelou.
Wow, that's really cool, man. And shout
Yeah.
out to Go
That's
Where
really
Hip Hop
cool.
Yeah.
because
That's really
Go
cool.
Where Hip Hop was the first blog that like
Oh,
posted my
word.
music.
Yep. Same here.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. I
Tibbs,
forget his
Max.
name. It's a dude from Maryland. We're friends with. No, we're friends on Facebook. I have to look it up. But he was like, he went to school at
Okay.
University of Maryland, and I sent them a track. I was sending tracks to like Fake
Yeah.
Shore, everybody, nobody would post it.
Yeah.
And dude was like, "Yo, this is hard, bro." Like whatever we were saying at that time, and he posted it, and like ever since then, and all of the other
Yeah.
blogs started posting me.
Yeah.
So
Go
that was
Where.
like shout out to Go Where
That was
Hip
a
Hop.
blog
Man.
era. That was a time, man. That was a
Yeah.
special time. You don't really realize it till it's done. It's like, wow, there's no other time like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I realized it because I was like looking at all of these people. I went
Yeah.
to Classic Studios at the time. That's where I recorded. And I would see like all of these guys that recorded there and they would be on the blogs. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
have to get on the
Yeah.
blogs. Like you're a nobody unless you're on the blogs. Like
Yeah.
I noticed it immediately. And also like that was like,
Yeah.
2010. So that's like
Yeah,
Wiz
that was
Khalifa
an
was
era.
coming up hard. And that
Yeah.
was an era for sure. So I was like, you have to be on the blog. So I knew what was up. And then it ultimately led to other relationships with people like Ferris and DJ Phantom and all this stuff like that. That was really cool. So, what I wanted to hear from you, Raffi, though, is like, a little bit about what you're doing in film and TV as well.
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 ways I do TV. I continue to do local segments in different markets on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. And of course, producing my own show, again, Cleo the Muse. And that one is designed over time because each season I do, let's say an average of 8 episodes and designed over time to accumulate, stories of individuals that do the challenge of the present by inquiring the past thing in some fashion. Now, there's a process I go through in that. I want the viewer to go through these 3 steps: surprise perception, provoke reflection, and inspire learning. And I think that's the process that kind of makes sense in order. Because if you surprise someone's perception based on their personal story, which is I think what speaks to people more than like facts and sort of information. You can get information anywhere. But the key is how it comes through in a story of personal experience, right? And if you surprise someone's perception, I think you're more likely to take that next step, which is provoke reflection. Because you reflect and say, you know what? Maybe my perception isn't everything, right? And you reflect on that. And that to me is a much better position to be in than being diabolical or screaming at each other or hating the other person just because they think or understand differently, right? And then finally, when you're reflecting that way, hopefully you're inspired to learn, which is the third step, to inspire learning. So with the show, guys, there's really, yes, history is a topic, it's a lens, but that's not the objective. The objective to me is some kind of social impact, the citizenship things. I think we're very polarized right now, and we need to be able to talk to each other and understand each other more, even if we disagree. And that's what I just happen to be using history as a lens to help do that. You see what I'm saying on the TV show? So that's why on my content, when I create my content, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. There's sort of this social ill, if you will, that I saw, and I thought I could do something about it based on kind of my depth of experience in history. I'll just add one more thing. I mentioned some of the sites I worked at. When I was in Georgia, I went to grad school in University of Georgia, and that's about an hour and a half from Atlanta. And while I was in school, not in the summers when I worked at Gettysburg, but while I was in the school year, I worked at the Martin Luther King home. And the Martin Luther King home is an urban national park. It's a National Park Service site, but it's in the,
Yeah.
obviously right in the city in Atlanta. And I would drive an hour and a half to get there and work and come back, you know, and I did it on days I didn't have class. And I learned a lot there about not just history, but social impact. I had incredible conversations in a forum that with strangers that you would never otherwise have, often even with your friends. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that was where I learned most, where it penetrates the most in my mind, the power of history to bring forward conversations with people today, even if I met them half an hour ago in that situation. You know what I'm saying? And I draw on that inspiration from more than a decade ago into this show. And I didn't know that at the time. It was in my head somewhere and it just happened to come out. This was the opportunity that came out and in this TV show. You know what I'm saying? So these pieces fit together and coming out on that media.
So that's awesome. So one thing, you know, you mentioned earlier in the conversation is you are Armenian, and Cam mentioned that he, you know, really appreciates African history and Black African diaspora, right? So, you know, both of those races or groups of people have experienced some type of, you know, plight throughout the world. We'll start with you, Raffi. Can you just, you know, educate our listeners a little bit about the Armenian history as you understand it?
Sure. Sure. I mean, the sort of nutshell of it, right, is that Armenians are some of the most ancient people in the world. They've been around for thousands of years. They are true Caucasians, meaning that they're from the Caucasus region of the world. They're not from the Middle East, and they're not really, you know, Caucasian the way we think of sort of Anglo-Saxon. We tend to kind of conflate those two now.
Yeah.
And so kind of interesting, right? But the point is that across time, a couple of key highlights are they were the first Christian nation in the world. And later that caused problems during the Ottoman Empire, which is what is now Turkey and surrounding area, which was Muslim. And there was some conflict there as a result of that. And about 100 years ago, about a century ago, there was what's called Armenian genocide, which is that there was sort of the Ottoman systematically trying to exterminate Armenian peoples. And there's not an Armenian family out there that you will find that who doesn't have a piece of their family tree that just fell off, including mine. They got killed, separated, siblings separated, all kinds of things, really horrible things. The estimated number is 1.5 to 2 million people. To give you an idea, today in the world, today, not 100 years ago, there's about 7 million Armenians. I don't know what the population was back there. I haven't seen a record, but you can imagine how many were affected. And the reason it connects to the diaspora thing is because that's why you'll find Armenian communities throughout the world from that time period. Many different countries they went to, including Egypt and Romania, which is where my family is from, the two different sides. They were part of diasporas that lived there. So Armenian culture also, much like the Black diaspora, has many subcultures based on where they spent the last 2-3 generations, because you get influenced by the world around you. So on my dad's side, it's Armenian influenced more like Eastern European cultural food and, you know, customs and things. And on my mom's side, it does have a Middle Eastern influence because they lived in Egypt, right? So there it kind of mixes up over there culturally. And that's where also some of the Greek mixes in. But the point also that's interesting about it, what ties them together is the Armenian identity, the language, and the religion. They're still, you know, they have an Armenian, there's a separate church. That's what ties them together. And so that connects to the African diaspora very well. When I was in school, that was one of the big things I studied was the African diaspora. That's one of my major fields. And all over the place. One of my essays in one of my published books is on Haiti, which of course is part of the Black diaspora and its perceptions from American Blacks in the 19th century. But without getting too far into the weeds on that, yes, there's a lot of parallels there, as you say, and I think that, you know, you can't understand, to come back to the Black diaspora, you can't understand North South America, really the Atlantic world, without understanding the Black diaspora. They're not separate histories; they're intertwined, right? So I had to study it, and I was fascinated by it. Now, whether it's because there's some kind of personal relation, because my family comes from a lot of plight as well, it's possible. I don't know. You know, there are lots of things that I find curious, but but you're right, Damari. That's an excellent observation, and I think the diasporas are tied together with stuff they dealt with, and the fact that they can span the globe yet have some interconnectedness while also having
Yeah,
differences
that's
in the
very interesting.
subcultures.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I would love to delve in a little bit more, but I definitely want to give Cam an opportunity to touch on this. So, Cam, one thing that kind of bothers me as a person who really enjoys history, but mainly like you, I look at a lot of Black history, and kind of to Rafi's point, you almost have
Yeah,
to if you really want to understand history, right? So, one thing that bothered me, like growing up in school, is that they would always start Black history with
yeah.
Black people in shackles, right? So I know you say you study history. Can you just like educate our listeners a little bit, about what was going on, maybe as far back as you
Well, I
study
think one of the
with Black
biggest things
history?
about history is the facts and the story are two different things. You know what I mean? Like things happen, but
Mm,
there's a story that is told that becomes bigger than the actual facts of things. And the narrative that we grew up in school and stuff was a certain narrative, but that wasn't the facts of the matter. Like Black people have been doing stuff in this country, all over the world, whether we've been, marginalized to not, those stories aren't being told or just is limited to these slave stories. But there's just so much range in what was happening with Black people, people, from the African diaspora for like, this entire time. Even you mentioned Haiti, like there was a range of people in Haiti, whether they were mulatto, free Blacks, slaves. There was a number of range of people at that time too. You could purchase your freedom in Haiti, and a lot of Black people did that and bought slaves and had their own plantations and different things like that. So like, there's just so much a range of story that we don't see and hear, and that you got to really like kind of dig to kind of find some of those stories. So I think that's one of the most interesting things. And like all the stories of like Africa and how advanced Africa was. The thing is, the Africans didn't really write a lot down. It was his story was through dialect, like sharing
oratory.
stories and
Yeah.
griots. Yeah. So not
Oral
everything was written
tradition.
down, and
Yeah.
some things were written down have been destroyed. You know what I mean? And like those things happen. So like
Yeah.
just knowing that and being aware of that, that we're not gonna always get the whole story of what happened, but just being attentive to like it's bigger than what you just get the typical in your typical textbooks. The history is a lot bigger than that, a lot more grand, a lot more elaborate, a lot more mixing of people, a lot more people have been mixing and migrating this entire time. You know what I mean? From different things, different cultures
Right.
springing up and
Right.
going away. Like it's so much to it, and just being open minded to
Yeah.
capturing that and getting that when you're going through history, I think is extremely important.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
new
yeah,
information. One
Can
thing
I
that
add something to that, Cam?
yeah. Go ahead, Rafi.
Go ahead, Damari. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rafi.
Okay. Okay. I just want to kind of support what you're saying and kind of build on it a little bit. Um, I think part of what you're touching on with the stories of Africa and Damari, the shackles that you talked about, we have this notion of what civilization is, right? And I think
Mm,
we define civilization as Europe or European based, right? And things that don't fit that don't always are somehow less or less civilized. And I think one way you could combat that is by studying more history of Africa
yeah,
that goes prior to slavery, right? There are these kingdoms and what we would say in our, civilizations and these, major places, but those stories are not nearly as much covered, right? Is what you're saying. I would say in popular perception. And the reason I say that, I would throw
yeah,
textbooks in popular perception because textbooks
yeah,
are generally not written by historians. They're not professional historians.
mm-hmm.
They're so removed from the sources. Whereas professional history deals with this
yeah,
stuff very well. It's just nobody
Yeah.
reads it, and it doesn't get a lot. It doesn't get out. Part of my goal is to help communicate this stuff in creative ways. But in popular, whether it's film, whether it's pop culture, whether it's in the classroom, because we don't really value content, teaching the content so much. It's kind of more these other theories. But the point is also, I want to add to that. You also see that in the way we think about American Indians, right? American Indians also not a lot written down, as you point out, Cam, and so somehow they're less civilized. They don't have the same history. How many times you hear these stories of we kind of think when Europeans arrived in North America or South
yeah.
America or wherever, that's when
Are they
history
discovered?
begins, right? They're
Right.
the first this or that, but also they discovered, right, or virgin forest. I'm like, no, there are people there, man. Even national parks, man. Before we created national parks, there were people living in there. And national parks are overgrown in part because we set it aside and we kick people out. But my point is this, that in the sort of, we think of this hierarchy of civilization. I think that applies to American Indians in the same way that if you study African history, not just slavery, goes beyond slavery, right? These civilizations there are these things such, for example, I used to live in New Mexico. You go there, guys, there are archaeological sites there that go back almost 10,000 years.
Yep.
And there are many that go back 2,000 years. And you're hiking, you come across them. There are remnants of towns there, buildings that were 2,000 plus rooms, guys.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
and you can still see the masonry.
Yeah.
Why is that not studied the same way, say, ancient Rome is? And you go there, I'm telling you, it's spectacular. All right, so it's because we don't expect it, right? We don't expect it there. We don't expect them there. Now, I don't think building stuff is necessarily the only civilization. I think there are nomadic groups that are, but that's a different point, right? And so there's two problems there. One is the civilization hierarchy we have, and two is there's a disconnect between, I think for the last 40 years, kind of, professional history has been trying to get at this. They've really been trying to deal with this and have more diverse voices and all that.
Yep.
And the education system, which is kind of more shaped by politics and shaped by educators that are taught how to teach, but not the content of what they're teaching. So they don't have the necessary depth to go into this kind of thing that we're talking about. And the textbooks have all kinds of other problems. You know what I mean? So point well taken, Cam. Really, really good point. And I just wanted to build on that. You know what I mean?
Great hearing your insight on it.
Yeah. One of the things that excites me about the time we live in is the fact that, like what you were saying, Raffi, that professional historians, even amateur historians, all these people are coming about because of the democratization of technology and the ability to travel easier and all this kind of stuff. And there's just so much data and science and all this stuff emerging that's contesting the accepted orthodoxy of a lot of this stuff. I think about like ancient Egypt. Like that's one thing that Dimari and I are really, really into. And there's all kinds of stuff that's contested the orthodoxy of what the Egyptologists and the the people there do to protect and preserve the story that's already been written. And it's just so interesting to see this stuff kind of coming about through YouTube and all these different sources and books that are emerging or re-emerging that were once cast aside. I think about there's a big movement about how psychedelics kind of formed the world and civilization back in ancient times, and back in the 70s and 60s when the people who originally put this idea out, they were considered kooks and cast aside to the fringes of society, and they were like scholars that were in big institutions and stuff. So it's really interesting that you made that point, and I love that you touched on that.
Yeah. So one thing, just getting to know Raffi over the years, and one thing that I'm really fascinated with as far as like your historical perspective is you kind of look at the nuances and you understand that everything isn't black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and a lot of the narratives are really up for debate, right? And so one thing that I really appreciate about what you're doing with history is that you add context to history, right? Tell us a little bit about like why you got into history in that specific vein of adding context opposed to just giving us data points.
Well, because to me it's about significance and relevance, right? And so data is just data if you don't do something with it. Now history is overwhelming in many ways because archives have endless resources. You misfile something in an archive, you may never find it. I mean, it's really that crazy, right? I mean, think about it. If you lose something in your house, it takes you sometimes, you can't find it till you move out. Imagine it in an actual archive, right? And not all that stuff by any means is even digitized. So, and so to me, like there's so much information out there. The context is everything to try to make sense of it. Now, as a result, I don't think there's one way to make sense of it. And that's kind of your point here, Dimari, and that's why to me, history is so dynamic, because it's so much more than just memorizing dates and names, which is what we do in grade school. But it's really about asking questions, and every generation of historians that comes across asks a different set of questions, and then new things emerge or digs deeper into archives. So there isn't one way to look at something. There's different interpretations. In history, if you get into it, it's a lot of debate, actually. And you have to be okay holding great perspectives if you study history closely. You just have to, because there's different valid questions that are asked and different conclusions, and both of them kind of make sense. And and reality is messy. It doesn't always have one simple question or one simple interpretation and answer, right? And so What I'd like to see more is some of this academic stuff be communicated better, because academics are guilty too, because they tend to try to communicate to each other. But their research is good, and the different questions are generally good. I mean, not always, but generally, it's because they're constantly pushing each other, right? They're debating each other. This guy tries to make their name in their dissertation, blah 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 blah. But if there was better communication with the public, you'd have less of these simple narratives that you all are referring to take over, not just in education, but again, it's perception. I separate that as history versus memory, right? Memory is what we perceive happened in the past, even if we weren't there for the event. Like you and I weren't at the Civil War. You and I weren't in the Civil Rights Movement. You and I weren't in World War II. Yet we have a certain perception, right, of the founding fathers, all these things. All of that to me is memory, because it influences. Anytime we refer to what this country is about, there is a certain memory that person is touching on that you believe about the founding of the country, even if you've never picked up a book on it, right? How did that perception form? Monuments, TV, politicians, movies, like just folklore, whatever it is, right? George Washington, in some ways, is a brand. How? I don't, I mean, so my point is simply that we have to separate memory and history. History can have different interpretations and questions and based on data. Memory is the evolution of how we perceive something, and itself changes over time based on what we see around us. Like I'll give one example of this. Recently, like Frederick Douglass has been rediscovered, right, because of what happened since 2020. Before that, I'm not sure many people will recognize the name. And so that's an example of how we remember things based on what's going on around us. Now, I don't think we're portraying Frederick Douglass fully accurately, to be honest, but we tend to read into what we want to see based on what's around us. And that's a great example of memory.
Yeah.
But if you look in depth, and many people, as including you and me, he has a lot of nuances and believed many things, and some of which I'm not sure we would totally like.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Cam, you mentioned that, just sticking with film for a little bit in TV, you've worked with some incredible names, and, one like common thread that I see between these names is these are all like pretty black, powerful, conscious, minded people. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do that has, has you working with these types of people. Like, are you a conscious person yourself? Like, how do you categorize yourself in that?
I like to think I'm conscious. I hope I ain't sleeping.
Love it.
I mean, I think it just naturally happened. I think it was just what I was naturally into, naturally attracted to. Just the way I grew up. My grandfather was really into like Black history, so he just was put me in front of a documentary or put a book in front of me, take me to a museum. He would just have these conversations with me. So I think naturally that's just kind of where I was in tune to, and I've always, like I said, been into like Black music history, like the blues, jazz, funk, reggae, rock, all of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's always been something that's a big part of me. I'm a big music collector. I have like a large vinyl collection, and I'm always adding to it, which may be a little bit of an addiction, but hey. It's just something I think that I've always been into in the first place. And a lot of artists that I worked with, I looked up to those artists, you know what I mean? And so to be able to meet them and work with them, and it just kind of was like a natural attraction. That's the music I enjoy. These are the artists I enjoy and I like and that I'm into. And I'm really about just kind of highlighting that, because also growing up, as a filmmaker, as a Black filmmaker, we didn't have too many people to look up to. We had Spike, we had John Singleton, you know what I mean? Even if you want to go back to like Melvin Van Peebles, that was somebody that I discovered and was like, man, this dude, Mario, but Melvin, his dad.
Oh, his dad. Okay,
was,
I'm sorry. I thought you said.
Yeah. His dad was, he created the first Blaxploitation film, Sweetback, Badass Revenge or whatever. Gordon Parks, like, these people, they were like, one of one, and just trying to have more representation and being in a space that, we have more voices and we can tell more. There's more stories, it's not just one Black lens or one Black perspective. It's different range of people's upbringing, their experiences, and they range to so many different things. I think also in my life, I've been actually quite fortunate to have a diverse family, with different types of people. As I mentioned, like my Bahamian uncle, but I have first cousins that are Navajo. Their mom's Navajo, so I get a little bit of that perspective and get to see that experience from somebody who grew up that way and lived that way and their family. So I just have a range of different people in my family. Even some of my cousins are half Vietnamese, so it's like so I just get to. That's been cool too, to just like have that perspective and see like we're all kind of the same in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that connect us, but then there's the differences too. But those differences are really beautiful. They kind of give it all the color that create the whole picture of us as human beings here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love what you said, Cam, about different voices within a culture too, right? Because that's really valuable.
Yeah,
We talked a little about earlier about the black diaspora throughout the world, but let's go into the U.S. Even there ain't just one black culture, right? You have like
yeah, yeah,
you have you think about the old South rural stuff, you think about northern urban, you think about the West. I mean, there's all kinds
yeah,
of different ways, and many people don't realize, we have this perception. Here's a great example of history versus memory. In memory, you think of cowboys, you think of John Wayne, right? Cowboys and Indians, and this whole thing
yeah,
comes out through movies. But in real life, majority of cowboys were
It's
black and
black.
Hispanic.
Yeah.
That's who was working with the
yeah.
cattle. You
Exactly.
follow what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and so you don't see that in movies very often, though, right? So history versus
No,
memory.
you
You know
don't.
what I'm saying? Our memory.
Yeah,
You and I weren't around back then, but we have a memory that somehow is shaped by these sort of social narratives. But the real history, and if you bother to do the real research, you find this stuff out. And again, the academic people don't communicate very well, and this is where it kind of breaks down. But it exists. The research is out there. You don't even have to go to the archives yourself. Now,
yeah,
I'll add another thing that people fall trapped to is they hear one voice from a certain group and they think it represents the entire whatever group that they think they're representing. And that's problematic, I think.
yeah,
And we need to understand that there's more than one narrative, right? And I appreciate something else because with your background, Cam, with all the different exposure to different cultures, me having family internationally because of everything I said my mom from Egypt and my dad from Romania. I got family in Australia, France, all kinds of places. And I'll say in the U.S., guys, I mean, I was talking about the Caucasian thing, right? The true Caucasian. The reason I think that's kind of funny is I never feel like I fit into white or black. Black folks see me as white, and white folks see me as non-white. So I can kind of
yeah,
straddle both at different times, and sometimes feel in or out or different things. You know what I mean? And sometimes it works in my favor, sometimes it doesn't. But the point is that you know in some ways that's kind of cool because I think it gives a certain perspective, if you understand like what different people, different backgrounds are understanding, because it's not easy to classify me. You know what I'm saying? In this simple kind of
Yeah.
boxes that
yeah,
we put. And then you touched on that, Cam, with the different backgrounds that you have and images and perceptions people have. But if they just look at you, they're not going to know that all those backgrounds influence your
yeah,
personal perspective. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I let me just add a little point to what you just
Go
said
ahead.
about how white people, view you, because I spent some time in Sweden and I lived out there for a little bit, and something that was really mind blowing to me was like Albanians, they were getting treated a certain way, like real negative there. And Sweden's a pretty open place, and as me as an American, a black American, I was getting treated like a king, like so great. I'm like, wow, this is
That's
great treatment. I
interesting.
don't get this in the U.S. And to see somebody who would be seen as white here being treated very like oppressed there was just like that was so mind blowing to me. And I was like, wow, like it's not even really just about color all the time. It's not, like different people see people different in different places, and you can get a whole different treatment. And
I think we lost you.
I lost the sound. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah, we
it's.
lost
yeah,
your
we
sound,
lost the
Cam.
sound. Oh, I
I
think
think
he's
it's
back.
back.
I got a call.
Oh,
As I
okay,
told
there we go.
y'all, I'm
Yeah,
dealing with
no, it's fine.
production right
No
now, so
worries.
people are calling me. I don't know if you
Yeah,
heard
no,
everything, but yeah, just that
no,
experience
but
was like really opened my mind up.
what's interesting? It made me think about my first time traveling, like to Asia. Went to Japan, and I had a similar experience where like everyone's like, it's like the best place ever to be a black American, just to be a black. I would say black American because they do have a
Yeah,
lot of Africans there too. But like, I was treated like a king. They're racist against white males in Japan. Like it's
uh huh,
insane. They absolutely hate them. I mean, rightfully so, right? They have their reasons, right? But it was just like super fascinating to see that, and it helped me realize that only in America am I black first, but in the rest of the world, I'm American first. So it was really
yeah,
interesting. But in
yeah,
America, I'm black before I'm American. It seems to
yeah.
me very, 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 very eye
Yeah, I had a
opening.
similar experience the same way. So it's very interesting. Like you're just American, you're actually cool because we Black Americans. Our culture has been like spread all over the world. So it's like, oh yeah, I really want to.
Right.
This person's cool.
Well, a
Yeah.
lot of American culture is Black American culture, and
Yeah,
I think it's funny how we separate that. A lot of things the United States is known for, in throughout the world, derives from Black America, and
yeah,
so you can't segregate the histories, but
Yeah.
we
yeah.
try to all the time. You know what I mean? And when I'll give you a quick example. We dealt with that when I worked at Gettysburg. We were redoing the museum there, and I was just working in the summers doing programs, but I wasn't involved in the museum recreation. But I watched it, and what happened when as I watched that happen was that many people may never visit another Civil War site besides Gettysburg. So we covered the entire war, not just the battle,
Wow.
and
Okay.
including causes of the war. So went back to slavery, the cause of the war, blah blah blah. But the point is this: that there was this discussion of where do we put the African American history?
Mm.
Is it going to be separated as an African American story or not? And there are some people that believe this should be a separate feature, including people that were very pro, getting the Black American story in. But ultimately, we decided to integrate it into the overall main narrative as opposed to separating it, because we thought you can't understand the full story without understanding those two pieces together, because in reality, they're not separated. They are
Yeah,
interconnected. And so it's a great example of how you have to deal with this stuff in real life, like not just in daily, living, but you have this museum that, possibly the most popular Civil War museum in the country, gets 1,000,000+ people in there a year. And you have the power of telling the story. How are you going to tell the story? And these big questions come up. And that's really, really important. And a side note, you mentioned the blues earlier, Cam. I live a few blocks from the National Blues Museum in St. Louis. It's great.
oh
And I
yeah,
go to
yeah.
there, they do performances there like 2-3 times a week. So I try to walk
Oh,
over
that's
and do some,
lovely.
check it out. Yeah,
Yeah,
from
Yeah,
local acts
I
and
love the
regional acts.
blues. I love the blues, man.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I
if
play
you're in
If you come
guitar,
visit
Chicago,
so
St. Louis, we'll go, man. We'll go.
yeah.
dude,
Hey,
you
my
got to check out
godparents live in
Buddy
St. Louis,
Guys,
so
man.
yeah,
Oh, come on out there, man.
yeah,
I
No,
should
it's in
get your number
Chicago where
because it'd
you
be
are. Go
fun.
to Buddy
Go to
Guys,
Buddy
bro.
Guys for sure.
yeah. Buddy guys over there in Chicago is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
a vibe.
awesome,
I
awesome.
met him once there one night.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool. He came out. He was like, he comes out. He just starts freestyling. He's like, hold on, wait.
That
Hey,
makes sense. Yeah.
make me a Cavassier. Make it a double. No, make it a triple. And he took that shot, bro. It was like the best experience ever. But 2 points, and then we know, Cam, you're busy. So one
yeah.
thing
I'm
that you
sorry
said,
about that,
Raffi,
y'all.
that was interesting about the Civil War thing. It made me think of a video I saw once with the late great Dr. Ben, and he was in I think he was in London at the famous museum out there. And one thing that I've noticed ever since watching that video is this is pretty much across the board at all museums, that you'll see that there's like a ancient Egyptian section in museums, and then there's like an African section.
That's
And
hilarious.
I've always thought that that's like, now since I've watched that video, I'm like, this is super interesting. Why do you think that is, Raffi?
Yeah, man, as usual, there's many interpretations, right? But I think there's a certain kind of divorcing we do from Egypt from, there's sort of this layers to it. That I think Egypt is almost kind of, if I think too sophisticated in what we perceive Africa to be. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
But I would also say there's another layer to it. I don't think we see Egypt in popular memory at the same level as, say, ancient Rome. You know what I'm
Which is
saying?
crazy.
And I'm always puzzled by that, because it's kind of funny, because I'm like, well, why is it that like you turn on these sensationalist shows that help shape our perception? They're not necessarily scholarship per se, but they shape our perception. They're powerful, and they're talking about aliens building the pyramids, but no one's talking about aliens building the Colosseum. You see what I'm saying in Rome?
Yeah,
So and so if you compare Egypt to Europe, it almost feels like we try to separate Egypt from Europe and the civilization. But if you compare Egypt to the rest of Africa, it's above it. So it's like in between somewhere. Just my take on the perception. I think our perception of things influences how we see it. Now, I'll say my mom, who's from Egypt, right, who grew up there, she takes a lot of pride in calling herself African, which is kind of funny. And
yeah.
because most people, because of this conversation, wouldn't classify her as African, but she identifies as that, and she gets kind of mad when people talk smack about Africa. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
identity is a complicated thing, guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, that's
I,
interesting. Cam, what do you have to say to that?
I want to chime in on two things that you said, two different things. I think the thing about Egypt that is so wild is the length of time that Egypt
Yes.
was, like and like everything else kind of pales in comparison to these thousands of years, and even Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, when they're united, when they're not. Like there's so many different layers of stories, and the fact that they were able to maintain and keep an Egypt that entire time is just like, that's really mind blowing to me. And then the
There's
other
this.
part is, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No,
I
no, go
was
ahead.
just going to say the other part about the diversity of Africa. I actually had some time where I've been working on a film in East Africa, and I spent a lot of time in East Africa. I've been in South Africa as well. But just like the range of diversity in Africa, we don't think about it, but it's like, man, there's so many different types of people, different hues, different complexions, different cultures. Like in Africa, it's a huge continent. Like,
Languages.
Yeah, languages. Yeah, that's
yeah,
another one.
languages,
Yeah.
just everything. So but people always just have a very like small perception and perspective of Africa and Africans.
Yeah,
It's a huge
Absolutely.
continent.
I was just gonna say,
Or it's a safari place, right? It's a
Yeah.
place to go see safaris, but not necessarily people. And I think there's a perception there. Look, I know there's great wildlife. Sure, there's great wildlife all over the place, but I think it's interesting to me how we think of Africa as a wild place and Europe as the civilized place. You know what I mean? Like, and and I know it just, or North America versus Africa, I mean, and so to me, I think there's just this sort of feeling of, Africa is less civilized. That's where you go see animals, and then if you go elsewhere, that's where you go see civilization. We don't focus as much on the people of Africa, specifically below the Sahara Desert, which is what we're talking about a lot of, right? And I think that's really a shame. I mean, you're right. Ghana, Ethiopia, all these places have incredible, rich histories and
Yep.
all the diversity, and we don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was just gonna say, Cam made me think of this fact that I always think of when you were talking about the timeline perspective of that we humans now live closer to Cleopatra than the ancient Egyptians did.
Yeah.
Which is super crazy if you think about the
It's a big
timeline
bit. Yeah.
perspective. It's insane.
Wait, I don't get that.
We, like humans now in 2022, live closer to Cleopatra than the ancient Egyptians did in the beginning of the Egyptian
Time-wise.
dynasty.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is insane.
It's insane.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. And you know what's even crazier is like people give America praise. I love America. I'm proud to be American and all of that jazz. But listen, dude, it's only 235 years old.
Yeah.
And Rome is burning already. So I don't know, man. The fact that
We ain't even made
Cam's
1,000
point-
years yet.
Exactly, right?
But Damari, but you know what? Let me just. I agree with saying, but let me just give you a little counterpoint to that.
Please.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a country that is still in the same organized formation for 200 plus years.
Yeah.
Agreed.
In other words, those other countries have, yes, deep cultures that run there, but their entities are much more recent than the United States. And in that sense, you could argue the U.S. is one of the oldest countries in the world. So
And
you know what I'm saying?
and what
Because
do
we're still
you-
using a system from back then.
Yeah.
And do you credit that to the Constitution? I know you published a book on this topic. Is that what you credit it to?
In large part, yeah. I think because the Constitution is a series of compromises, and B, it's something that is a blueprint, not policy. And that's important because when you overdo it in the Constitution and you put policy in there, it becomes outdated much easier. Whereas the Constitution is very short. It's very short. You can read it in half an hour. That's very different than some of these other documents that go, 100 pages and therefore it's much more, it's not really a blueprint or a framework anymore. And so it becomes outdated much quicker.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of about the point of the Constitution's written on principles and values that kind of transcend the
Time.
modern fashion. So that like if a constitution is to constitute, right, it cannot change with the winds of fashion. That's a quote from an unknown person. I don't remember who.
We'll give it to you.
I don't know who to credit the quote to, but
Brandon Rizzo.
it's a quote. But I love that quote because it's like that is kind of why the Constitution's been successful, is because it's written on principles that transcend the time or the time that it was written in and can continue to be improved. So that's, I think, an interesting point.
Yeah, and Rizzo,
yeah.
one thing I would add to that, though, is just real quick, is and yet what's kind of cool about it is you can change it on certain major things. For example, slavery. You know what I mean? Before slavery was okay under the Constitution, then we were able to change the Constitution to not allow it. So So it allows it to change with the times as well. Now, I'll just say one thing on constitutions. We're talking well about it, is that there was debate on the Constitution, even by the people that wrote it and
Yeah.
were ratifying it. And that's important to remember, because we can debate the Constitution, and you'll hear all the time, this is what my Constitution book is about, is you had many people in the founding generation that opposed or wanted a different version or had different interpretations of the very same Constitution they helped pass. And that's really important, because when we see debate on the Constitution today, you have any side, anyone will say, they'll find a random quote out of context from a founder to say, look, they agree with me, therefore the Constitution has to mean this because my way is what the original founders intended. What I would say to that is, I can find another quote that says otherwise. Who's right?
Mm-hmm.
They debated it themselves. We're going to continue to debate it ourselves. And that's important to recognize, so that debate isn't something that makes someone else evil just because they see the Constitution differently, because even the founders disagreed on what it meant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So definitely want to wrap it up a little bit. I can talk to you guys like forever at this point. But Cam, tell us a little bit before we let you go. We didn't really get a chance to delve into like your music. You know, I know Rizzo's a great musician.
Yeah.
I like to spit. You know, they say I have bars or whatever.
Bars.
Yeah, man. So Cam, tell us a little bit. You mentioned like you had a band or something. So what was that?
Yeah,
like?
I had a band called Untitled that we used to rock with for years. Recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I put out my own projects. I have an album called Summer and September that I put out in 2020, and one called 7 Steps to 7 that I put out in 2018. And I'm currently working with the artist Neek, and we're putting out a collaborative project
That's my guy.
this year called a film called
Awesome.
Black. That's my first time actually talking about the film. Talking about the project. You know, we actually have a residency with Arts and Public Life for this project as well. So I'm really excited about that. I love working with Neek. And working with him in this capacity has been really cool. It's definitely challenged my production. But yeah, I'm doing like hip hop, funk, soul. It's a blend, but that's the roots of it.
Definitely want to check that out, man.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exciting. So,
Yeah.
like, you're just doing the production, or you do vocals
I
as
do
well,
both.
or
I
what?
rap. I play the guitar, play the bass, and I produce. I work on Machine right now, but I work in Logic and stuff too. So, yeah, I've been doing that for years, really. Like, you know, Rizzo, remember when, you know, we was doing stuff in the band? That was years ago, you know, and I just continued on. I took a little time as I was focusing more on film to focus more on film, but I've always been doing music still. Even on the side, I was still recording and doing stuff here and there. And then in 2018, when I put out my album 7 Steps to 7, it went well. And it kind of continued to spark me to want to do more. And just I got a new vision. You know, outside of working with my band, I kind of had my own vision for what I want to do with my music. And so I kind of been continuing that on.
Wow. So you mentioned that like your grandfather kind of introduced you to different genres of music and stuff like that. What you know was the impetus for you to, you know, start creating your own music?
Again, all this stuff I've been doing since I was a little kid. Like me and my cousins will record, we'll have a little Casio and make a little radio station, and we'll be our own characters, and we'll put out our own album. And then I used to have a cousin. We used to come home and skip school stuff and freestyle and make little samples and beats and stuff. This was like middle school, high school, and we would just do a whole mixtape just in one day. We were just freestyling all the songs. So I mean, I've been like, I don't remember not doing it. You know what I mean? Like I always been doing it. So it's just always
I'm
been,
gonna listen tonight, man. So I'm gonna listen to you tonight, like on my drive back. Like, what should I listen to first?
Listen to Summer and September, because that's my most recent one.
Okay.
I'll also send them some Untitled.
Yeah, so you can send them some Untitled and see the growth. But Summer and September and 777, they're not like long albums, so I think you can get through them pretty quick. But I think they're great listens. I think you'll like the music. I definitely think you'll like
it. Okay, and it's under Cam B is
the
moniker?
Cam B, yeah. You can find it anywhere. Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere. Yeah, it's all over.
So
you want some vinyls, get at me too. I got vinyls.
I don't even have a vinyl player, man. So I'm in 2022.
Yeah,
Cam, you got to send me some vinyls because I did get a vinyl player.
Yeah, some people really still collect vinyls, so I'm a big vinyl collector. So it's definitely a culture of vinyl collectors.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, but for a second, wait. So this may come as a surprise to you, but Raffi's a huge hip hop aficionado.
I believe it.
And he likes some of the bad stuff.
I grew up in LA in the 90s. Come on, man. I mean, how can I
like some of the bad stuff?
He like
what bad stuff?
Yo, I'm like talking to this fool one day. He like sends me like a track from like Young Dolph.
Like
This is like Young Dolph is still alive, bro. Like this is like not post.
Yeah.
This is like Young Dolph's alive. This is not a single. This is like a track.
cut.
I'm like, bro, I didn't even like listen. Yes, it's an album cut. I didn't even listen to Young Dolph for real. I'm like, bro, what? Who are you, Raffi? So tell us a little bit about like, because you did mention like, the black America being like the greatest exporter, one of the greatest exports of America, right? Just tell us how you got introduced to like hip hop and the type of music that you listen to.
I mean, dude, I grew up in '90s in LA. I mean, what can I say? I mean, that's the days of. I mean, it was happening in my city, right? Dre, Snoop, that whole thing, NWA, and so Tupac obviously was all kind of right there. And when you're young and impressionable and it's in your city, I mean, how can you not? You know what I mean? And honestly, that was one of the first things that kind of made me socially aware when I was a kid. The Rodney King police stuff happened, and as you may know, Tupac kind of spoke out a lot about that. And when you're a little kid, I don't know how big, I know Tupac after he died was big nationally, but this is when he was alive, and I know he was getting big nationally, but in LA he was probably even bigger. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
So to me, it was kind of something it was very influential. Now, I do like, people ask me what are my favorite types of music. I played violin growing up.
Wow.
My two favorite types of music are opera and hip hop.
Okay.
So go figure. Yeah, that's a good example of how contrasts really, really kind of affect each other. But so maybe that's why I'm into more than just the singles, Dimari, because I mean, you know me, I kind of get into the technical aspect of the construction of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious about those things. So I go more than just the hook that's in the single. I try and so I kind of get into it. You know what I mean? So go figure. I know, but it's really the product of where I happen to be. Fortunate, and I was into music because of the violin background.
Wow. Do you still play the violin or what?
No, I lost playing it when I moved around a lot. I have it still, and I want to pick it back up though. I do. I think it'd be really cool because it's just, again, another way of using your brain, and I enjoy that. I like to engage different parts of my mind. You know what I mean?
It definitely fits your persona too, man.
I can see you with that violin.
Totally see, right?
Like Albert Einstein.
The bow tie.
Yo, I love it, man. This is awesome. So, Cam, where can people find you, man?
I'm online. Cam Movement is the name of my company. Everything kind of runs through there. Or can be. I'm online. You can find me. Google.
Okay. Anything you have going on that you want the people to know about?
I mean, I'm releasing a film next year, but I mean, I think I talked about the main stuff with the albums and stuff like that. My film is called Building Hope. It's about two women who built a school in Rwanda, and just kind of their journeys, their own personal journeys. One is a genocide survivor from Rwanda too. So like, just her. It's a very powerful story. It's called Building Hope, and we'll be coming out with it next year.
Awesome. Love it. Where are you going to release it?
We'll see. We got some festivals. We got, we'll see where it's streaming, where it lands. I'm not fully sure right now, but it's been supported by Cartemplin Films in Chicago, and an organization called Breakout is also supporting it. So
that's awesome, man. Raffi, man, where can the people connect with you, and what do you have going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, like Cam, I got a bunch of sites, but I think maybe the best one that's easiest here is celebrityhistorian.com. If you go there, there's actually a link tree to a whole bunch of the different stuff we talked about, to the books, to the TV show, all kinds of things on there. So celebrityhistorian.com. If you go on there, you can get connected to the TV show. You can go direct to the TV show if you want. It's cleothemuse.tv. We'll take you there, CLIOTHEMUSE. But celebrityhistorian.com has that and all the other stuff we discussed. And you can also get in touch with me there if you want to chat about anything. I'm totally down.
That's awesome. I just, before we go, I just want to say there was one thing, Raffi, that you said that kind of stuck with me throughout the whole podcast, and I was thinking about it. You said something about the mission that you're on with your show is like kind of, bring unity and bring people together rather than all this like, division and stuff. And that's really what we're trying to do with this podcast. And I think back to my times with Cam in Chicago, and there was just this rich tapestry of all these different artists, different races, different walks of life that we kind of intersected with in this circle of musicians and photographers and all these artists. And I don't know if it was the time that Cam and I happened to go to Chicago and be in college there and stuff, and if it was just that time was right. But I love, that's always stuck with me, that kind of like collaborative spirit we have with all those people, and I want us as a people and as a world and a country to get back to that. And I love that you guys do stuff in that kind of spirit. I think one of the things we talk about is being creators is one of the greatest gifts that we have in this world on this earth, and as much as we can steer into that, it's important. So you guys just made me really appreciate and have a lot of gratitude on this episode for those times in my life and listening to you guys speak. So
yeah, awesome, man. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
And where can people find you, man?
Rizzo Feels on Instagram.
And I'm Judah Clan. Until we're side by side again.
We'll see ya. Bye, guys.